Ephraim is in the studios with us. Good morning, Ephraim.
Morning, Jesse. How are you?
Madam Teresa.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Wait a bit before you talk about Amatora. I want to talk about how Jesse had a car that was lighting and he didn't know what was going on.
No one said I didn't know what was going on.
No, he knew.
You knew.
No, it just happened that I saw it. It was in the heat of the day.
The heat of the day. You make it sound like it's part of the programming on Royal FM and go heat of the day. No, it's my guy. Okay, there's an actual page on Instagram. I think it's on Instagram or wherever. They actually revoke men, what they call the men card. So if a man does something that is suspect, it's toxic masculinity, but we allow it. If a man does something that is suspect, he doesn't know how to change a tire, the things that stereotypically.
But you also know that men who do not know change tire.
That's what I'm saying. They get their cards revoked. Yeah, by that page. So Jesse,
did his revoked?
I'm just telling you, there's a warning. This is probably a warning letter issued to tell you, man, you need to figure out what those lights mean. But you know what those lights mean.
How shouldn't I know?
Okay, he's okay.
Once you see the light blink.
Once
take the car to the garage.
That's the plan.
Like you did yesterday. Why are you lying to me?
That is completely unlike a man. Do you know what men normally do? Men, even if they don't know, they will die on the high horse before they take it to the mechanic. The mechanic is last resort. That told you go take it to the mechanic. Go, no, I'll fix it myself.
But you know what I did? This is what happened. Now, we were stopped by the traffic here.
We said like
around
DMC.
DMC.
40 minutes.
And then I just branch off, and in there was a leakage. A lady who sells me to you comes over and says, I think your car is leaking. So I go check it out. But it was too hot inside and outside of the car. So I go back and try to ignite. And what do I see? I see it's giving that indication that I do not have any more water because it was leaking. And because now I could not cross the road, His Excellency was coming from his house to go, cast his vote. And we waited for a long time. I just ran into a nearby supermarket. I ordered for water from the fridge.
Guys, are you hearing that? He actually ordered for mineral water.
Guys move differently.
Oh my God.
Even the cars get...
Standards are here. They're very different.
Exactly.
The ground is not leveled.
Sparkling water.
Sparkling water.
Sparkling water for refreshing your engine. Oh, wow.
Uncle Prosperity. You've seen it? You've seen it.
That actually defines Uncle P.
You've seen it?
Yeah.
I don't, my car doesn't take any other water, only sparkling from the fridge.
Guys,
let's get to business.
Okay.
Ephraim, you are a fan of His Excellency Paul Kagame. What's your feeling? 99.15% provisional results, that's what we see.
Yeah, we're happy. I mean
the provisional, remember.
Okay. At the end of the day, provisional, not provisional,
sealed off.
He has won.
Yes.
And it's what us Rwandans we want. Simple as that.
Nothing
more, nothing less.
What does this percentage mean?
You saw campaigns? Yeah. It means people who went for campaigns went and voted. Simple as that. Because when you look at the turnout during campaigns and the pandemonium, the excitement that surrounded campaigns, I'm not surprised that we got the result that we got. I'm not surprised at all. Yeah.
It's very interesting. It also means that Rwandans, there's a vote of confidence in the leadership.
I was telling it to somebody, if you think about what has happened over the past 7 years in the country, why would you vote for anybody else? When you think about it, I'll just think of, you just mentioned Kendrick Lamar. BK Arena, at the time Kigali Arena when it was constructed in the past 7 years. Through it, I don't know how many events have come to Rwanda. That's just one simple example. When you talk about MICE really took a foothold in the past 7 years. When you talk about the economic development, even when you look at what happened during COVID, the development that has happened, look at the stadium, the renovations that happened around it, the construction of the new airport. All of these things have happened in the past 7 years. So I think I'm talking now what we see from an infrastructure perspective. Roads. Think about the roads that were constructed in preparation for CHOGM. Because when you build the roads for CHOGM, they stay after CHOGM. I mean, unless you are unserious, which I've seen a lot of people are, you can't be stuck in traffic in Kigali unless you're unserious. There's always a road to use. It never used to be the case. There were the main roads we knew that you had to pass here. There were no other side roads. Now the feeder roads are numerous. I can get from town to Chiwagawaga without ever having to pass by Convention Center.
Do you see that the voters would have any other pressing and immediate demands on the leadership of the country in this coming 5 years, or happy, contented, fulfilled?
No, you see, that's another thing. Excitement doesn't mean without problems. Like if you ask me right now, are you happy? I'm happy. But does that mean I'm void of any issues? I have my own issues that I'm dealing with. Same thing with anybody in this room. Same thing with the Rwandan population. Same thing with our country. And His Excellency keeps saying that. He says, yes, we've done so much, but we still have so far to go. And so don't get lost in the sauce. Don't get lost in the hype, the excitement. Yes, we've done this. So the immediate needs are there. They were there even before we voted. They will be there. So they are there after. And so the whole point is, the people who have been tasked with the responsibility of carrying out the work from that perspective of the public sector have that role. Even us in the private sector, we have our role. And so the immediate needs are the same old. The economic prosperity and development of the Rwandan people, the social stability of our country. This centers around education, healthcare, the home, social welfare in that context. Those are certain aspects that still need work. And so any citizen who lives here and has been here knows that, the voting is not a sign that there is no problem. The voting is a sign that we trust His Excellency to be the one to help us as we move forward in solving those problems.
And this trust goes on even after the next 5 years. I hope the memo is received this morning. Today we have Ephraim. Our conversation is not to analyze the politics of the day. Our conversation is entirely business. And we want to talk about personal boundaries in businesses. When we talk about boundaries, most people think of relationships and determining and communicating what we are for and what we are against. However, times have shown us that boundaries in the workplace are equally important. Ephraim, I'd like us to talk about, when we say personal boundaries in business, what exactly do we mean? And as a business owner, how can you establish and communicate personal boundaries without jeopardizing customer relationships or business operations?
So this conversation, for me, I feel like it's, in today's world, it's more pertinent than before because of the dynamic of work and business environments. The other day, and I'm not going to mention names, there was an incident that happened on social media, and there was a back and forth because it was tied around boundaries. And you probably wouldn't have heard of it, but just you probably would have. There was a young lady, she's a service provider, and she was approached by somebody. And the person sends her message and is like, hey, I want to procure your services. Now, it seems like the lady kept asking, where did you get my number from? She's a service provider. She kept asking, where did you get my number from? And the person is like, why do you care? At the end of the day, I want to give you business. And the young lady is like, so she's like, no. She takes a screenshot, puts it on social media. Obviously, she got attacked by some people, but there were some people who also supported her. And the conversation was pretty much about, at what point do you draw a boundary? Yes, you need business. Yes, you are a service provider. Yes, you want you want customers, you want to make money. But where do you draw the line of what's acceptable behavior and not in a business relationship? Now, I'm not going to give my opinion on what I think was right or wrong, but such conversations in today's society are very necessary, because on the flip side, you also have customers who are very, very rude. Because they believe we're giving you money, we will take you left, right, center, east, north, south, just because they're like, we are the customer and the customer is always right.
King. But also, Ephraim, if your number is out there you've actually put your number out there and you're a business person, does it even make sense when someone reaches out and say, I want to give you business, and then you ask them, where did you get my number from? I mean, your number is everywhere. It's like a billboard.
I know. So that was the debate. The debate is actually very long. People really went in on that conversation. I think genuinely, if you decide you're gonna be a business and you're gonna put yourself out there, you can decide what business you take or not. But there is a decorum associated with how you interact with a client. The way she handled it, in my own personal opinion, I think was wrong. Asking her, where did you get my number? Where did you get my number? Was not the best way. Then even taking to social media was also not very professional. But I would say that what was she wrong for drawing a boundary around who she wants to work with and not? She's very right. At the end of the day, she's the service provider. But now my question I wanted to ask you, in your own world, you guys you've been in the professional space for a very long time. When someone says boundary as it pertains to work or business, what comes to mind?
I don't pick calls after 4 p.m.
You don't pick calls after 4 p.m.
I do not respond to certain messages that are not appropriate or are not business related.
Okay. And why did you set those boundaries? For you, why don't you pick calls after 4 p.m.?
No, not that I don't pick calls after 4 p.m. I'm saying when I think about boundaries,
that's
an example of what people would do. I do not respond to emails after office hours.
When I'm at home, I don't do work. So for you, you pick calls after 4 p.m.
I'm a hustler.
Now, because there's a reason why I brought this conversation, because I wanted us to understand that boundaries is tied mainly to our mindset. So you pick up calls.
I pick up calls even at midnight.
And so what do you think? Okay. What do you think separates you?
What kind of business is past midnight?
I'm like, too much information.
Midnight.
I'm like, what business is being discussed?
The last business I received came in, I think, around midnight, where someone gives me a call and says, hi, we would like to start our campaign tomorrow, which was the following day. And if you can send me something now, an indication of cost, I would send you the instruction to start in the morning.
Okay, so you believe that your boundary, the difference between you who picks up calls after midnight for whatever reason, and somebody who doesn't is because you're a hustler, and the person who doesn't is not. Is that what?
No.
Yes, no.
It is because they're protecting something, maybe.
Okay, just imagine with me. What do you think they're protecting?
Mental health, protection, exhaustion, family, values around things they do. Office is office and family is family, and that's it.
Okay, and on your side, you say you don't like inappropriate messaging if it's beyond work, like when someone is, I'm assuming as a lady, someone is coming and making sexual advances towards you. Maybe that's what you mean by the boundaries.
They're part of work.
Exactly. So you can actually get into business. I have been there when someone texts you and it goes past business, and you can see where the questions are directing totally different direction. And I think that's when drawing boundaries comes in. I have to say, this is not right. I don't think I'll respond to this.
Now, I want to ask, there was an incident that happened recently, and I've seen it happen a couple of times. Back in the day, doctors used to always be on call. You always knew whenever you needed your doctor.
Even now, gynecologists are always on call. Like it's just
questionable.
If they're not, it's not. I think it's not even questionable, that one. I mean, if you are due anytime, your doctor says, "I am on call anytime."
So let me give you a personal story. So my sister recently had an incident. She had an ectopic pregnancy. They called her gynecologist over and over. Through the night, they had to rush her to the hospital. She ended up getting operated on by somebody else. The doctor then calls in the morning. Hi, how are you? Meanwhile, his patient has gone through operation. Right. And it's not one situation. It's not two situations. This has happened. And that's in another country. That's not Rwanda. Now, imagine in Rwanda in of itself, we have many stories where you hear a doctor will come out. His shift has ended. He's there. He's in the vicinity. The doctor who's supposed to be on duty has delayed a bit. There's an emergency. The person will quietly hide himself, say, I'm not, my shift has done and left. I don't know if you heard that story that was on social media some time back, where I think it was in Kabuga or Masak, and a child died in the arms of the grandmother. Because of that.
Because of boundaries.
That's
Because
so unethical.
But that's what I'm trying to tell you. The doctor can justify and say, but I drew a boundary. Because for me, I worked a 12-hour shift. I was tired. This is somebody else's responsibility, not mine. The person who is not here should have been here, and it should be on them and not me.
But then you sign an oath. You see, as a doctor in your professional world, for example, you sign an oath that you will actually save a life. You will it doesn't matter whether it's within your working hours or not. You're supposed to save a life.
So now, coming back to what the topic is at hand, right? Boundaries are such a sensitive topic because, first and foremost, what is a boundary? So boundary by definition is acceptable behavior. What is considered acceptable and non-acceptable behavior as it pertains to your work, your relationships? What would you consider safe for you? If I say Jesse and I are in a relationship, we are friends. He's my friend. What is where do we draw the line on what is acceptable? Can he come to my house and eat my food without me being there? Can he go to my bank account and withdraw money? Can he take a loan against my name? Can he take my wife out on a date? And I know
that should be fine.
It depends. Some people now, Chibazo, there are people. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Boundaries is subjected to the individual, and they have their reasons. But what I've come to learn is that, unfortunately, because of the personal nature of boundaries, when you now try to take it into a work environment where standardization is necessary, it becomes very hard to manage. Let me give you a simple example. If you're in a work environment and you need somebody to come from 9 to 5, and when they are in the office space, you need them to be available on call. And somebody comes in with a boundary within those parameters of work, and they're like, for me, it's what I prefer. It protects my mental health. It's what I feel comfortable doing, and it's how I thrive. What do you do as an employer? What do? You have dealt with Gen Z, and
you go back to terms of reference.
You go back to terms of reference. And funny enough, I just said Gen Z, but I realized recently there's an incident I had. It transcends Gen Z. It's just the time that we're in. Even the older generations, the millennials, the Gen Xers, the boomers are all like that. You find that they reach up this whole mentality that we had growing up, where you go to work, your time is your boss's. If your boss tells you to jump, you jump. If your boss tells you to lie down, you lie down. Because at the end of the day, they're the one paying you a salary, and that is the reality of your job. If you're not happy, leave.
I think we're in a time where people are so aware. There's a lot of awareness on, especially the critical importance of time, that this is the only resource that you have. And if someone is managing your time on your behalf, they actually are cheating on you. And so this sense of awareness makes people think, if you hired me to work 8 hours and I've given you 8 hours if this is my scope of work and you gave me 8 hours in a day to finish this scope, but I am able, because of the tools at hand, I am able to finish my scope in 3 hours, then the rest of the time is mine. You can't ask me for the next day today.
I also think we are very entitled lately.
That's I want to hear what she has to say about this.
Because I believe, growing up, we all knew that when it's time to work, it's regardless of if it's your time, if your time is done. When your boss calls you and there's more work to do, you'll have to work.
Exactly.
But what is happening is these days a lot of people are entitled. Not only Gen Z, by the way.
Yes.
Like even millennials are entitled. Everyone feels like, no, it's my right. Like everyone is over knowing their right. I think it's overly knowing your right and misusing it. Also, maybe the other thing is we are a little bit lazy, but we want things done.
And so for me, what I've noticed is, unfortunately, and this is not to sit here and talk about what's right and what's wrong. This conversation is about boundaries. And we need to figure out how effective can we be as a society and as individuals if we allow boundaries. To what extent do we allow boundaries into the workspace? Again, I repeat, stuff like you said, sexual harassment, emotional and verbal abuse, those ones you can draw lines. But I feel like You know, when you give somebody an arm and they want to, I mean, you give them a finger and they want to take the arm, or you give them a toe and they want to take the leg. You give them an inch, they want to take a mile. When we set boundaries in against abuse, which is where most boundaries stem from, which we call unacceptable behavior, we have gone and made it a subjective aspect, because sexual harassment is objective. Sexual harassment is unacceptable. Black and white. There is no one who can debate it.
No doubt.
But we take an objective aspect of which is now boundaries, and we now make it subjective. Boss, I don't like, if you want to communicate with me on text. I don't like phone calls. I don't feel comfortable on the phone. You're like, but you need to pick up my calls. My mental health. And I'm like, okay, we can understand that, but I feel like we are allowing too much to our own detriment, and under the name of trying to create mental health. Because again, I'll repeat, the objective aspects of boundaries, which again, let me use that example of sexual harassment, is so black and white. But telling your boss you prefer text over or emails over calls is very subjective. So now when it comes
But what's the problem with that? If a staff member said, I prefer you to put that over the email.
But also, in your terms of work, I mean, was it even written anywhere that you, because I'm assuming that you were asked what you couldn't do in all that. Did you actually explain to your boss prior that I would rather have everything communicated through mail, not on calls? I mean, who are you?
No, I think there's abuse from the side of employers, especially. There's abuse using people. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
When somebody, for instance, says, how come you're saying you didn't see that email? Don't you have a phone? Don't you have data?
So Jesse,
I'm not supposed to see the email. I was at the beach.
Jesse's answering. No, Jesse, me, this is what I would say. There's a healthy way to set boundaries, but let us not get lost in our own source. Let's talk about being a service provider. Once you've put your number out there and a customer keeps calling you for a service, and then you keep asking, like you said, at that point there's no boundary you are setting.
No.
There you are being unserious. Just handle it in a very politically correct manner if you don't want to work with that person. But don't be, because the person, when you look at the text conversation, the person was not abusive to this individual. I, on the other hand, had an experience with a client who used to use the F word a lot, and he was a white man. So he was a tenant of mine. He would complain about things, and he would cuss, and he would then attack your character, either me, an employee. He would cuss.
No, that's where you draw your boundaries.
Exactly. Now there you tell the client, as much as I want your money, we're closing this chapter. The guy even now started accusing me of being a sleazeball because I terminated the contract. He says, you have a client who's coming in who's going to pay more. I said, my guy, this is purely on the basis that you cannot talk to human beings like that. And then also for me, on my side, I also felt like the person being his race, and then I felt that there was a tinge of racism associated with the conversation. There you draw a boundary. Whenever there is abuse, there, like you said, it's very black and white. No one will blame me for taking that stance and refusing to work with that client. But if I don't want to work with the client because
they reached out past 10, I mean, I think also we set unrealistic boundaries.
If you don't want clients to reach you by 10 o'clock, switch off the phone.
If you're if you're a service provider, we all provide service out there. Even radio is providing service, everyone. And your number is out there. I think there are some boundaries that you want, like you just want to raise your standards up to, like, you're from a different world. You need to lower yourself to think with other people on the ground. If the client reached out and said, can I have your service? And then you ask them again, where did you get my number? It's very useless. It's very unprofessional of you, by the way.
And by the way, we're in a global village. Okay, it's 10 p.m. somewhere.
And it could be
7
like
a.m. somewhere.
So you said something about bringing ourselves down, and that's what I was about to say. The only way for you to truly make a good living, and what I mean by good living, I mean you have a business that's growing, you have a customer base that appreciates what you do. If you're an employed individual, for you to be productive in the space that you're in, you need to be humble.
Thank you.
I've never seen anybody benefit from ego. Succeed from pride and ego. I'm very yet to see someone who, it can help you in the short term. Your confidence pushes you through rooms, but there's gonna reach a point where your ego is gonna become your worst enemy.
Yeah, but sometimes the ego can chase the demons.
I've never heard that saying. By the way,
It's
I don't know where you
can hear it.
Yeah.
It's just
Where have you? It's you who said it. Yeah, that one. Yeah, we take it with a grain of salt.
But guys, okay, so also bottom line is like he's saying what he's talking about ego doesn't even grow. There's no growth. If you have ego, there's no growth. So I delivered a service somewhere, and like, you know how they call you to grill you because the service went wrong, and then when you get there, even you look at someone who should not even be grilling at the lowest. Okay, I don't want to sound like this. Someone who should not even be grilling you. Someone you look at and like, seriously, you shouldn't even be saying anything. But you be humble and listen to them.
Yeah.
It doesn't even cost you anything.
No.
Because you provide a service. If it went wrong, then apologize.
Yeah.
Just be apologetic about what happened.
Yeah. And I've noticed, and just to come back, because we're talking about now from a service provider perspective, there's an issue I've noticed amongst working professionals, the young ones, is that unfortunately there's a passive aggressiveness associated with also not drawing boundaries. So what happens is that when guys don't draw healthy boundaries, they'll get trampled on, they will go complain about it, they have the pain in the heart, and it starts to reflect in that work. My advice to such people is don't allow yourself to not draw boundaries to the extent that it affects your ability to perform. So that people in Muchinyarwanda, there's a word, it says kwivumbura. Kwivumbura is almost like to protest, if I'm to directly translate it. So what happens is that you're unhappy, and then you say, okay, I'm going to show you. And then showing you is you do poor work. Communicate. If you have an issue, in a polite, respectful manner. Yes, if you have a boss who is unreasonable, then you say, okay, I think it's time for me to take my leave and find another place to work or another place within the organization to be effective. But don't ruin your career or your opportunities because you are unhappy, because you didn't draw boundaries. Again, boundaries should be black and white, objective, not subjective.
In the interest of time, because we have just about a minute to go, what advice would you give to business owners who have this fear of setting boundaries? Because if they set the boundaries, it could lead to losing clients or missing out on opportunities.
Okay, it's tough because you can hear from this conversation, am I pro-boundaries or anti-boundaries? I think I sound like I'm anti-boundaries. But I think one of the things that I would advise anybody, any entrepreneur, is to say, first and foremost, don't get lost in your own sauce. Even if you have the hottest product, you have the hottest service, people want you left, right, and center, they are calling you, pick up your phone, deal with the clients, be humble enough. Once you are humble enough, yes, there will come times where you can see a customer is being unreasonable. Again, I repeat, go and seek advice before you make an emotional decision. Don't act impulsively. If you see a customer is demanding too much, they're cutting the amount of money they're giving you, they're being unreasonable, go seek a third opinion or second opinion and say, hey, what do you think about this situation? What should I do with this client? If it still points towards terminating the contract, terminate it. What I've learned normally is that losing bad clients is actually good for business. Yeah. So don't be afraid to lose business. But I'll repeat, in the process of terminating that contract, don't ruin your name. Don't soil your name by doing it badly. Remain professional at all levels. Talk to people nicely, be polite, and it stems from what she said. Be humble. Even if you think that the person who is reprimanding you does not have the right to reprimand you in any way, they are not the supervisor, they're not the person who procured the service, they are not even qualified to give you feedback on what it is. Just keep quiet, listen to them, but at the end of the day, say, you know what? Thank you for all of that, but I would like to talk to your supervisor.
By bad customer, did you want to mean those customers who call you past midnight?
No. Again, I'm a hustler, like you said. I can pick up calls whenever. Ariko, I would say, if you have, depending on your values at the time, if you've told a client, please call me within working hours, and the client emphasizes they're going to call you after hours, if they have no regard for your time, unless it's the nature of their own work, then you can call them a bad client. But again, it's all contextual. Like you said, you were called in the middle of the night. It might have been a sensitive campaign that needed to be pushed, and the people who were making decisions, that's when they were having that meeting.
You know how I manage? In as much as I can pick my phone anytime. But I only pick my phone when I can access it. So for as long as I see and my phone is switched on, it means I want to pick calls. And it's within, you know, a place I can see it. If I put the phone away, for instance, I never walk with the phone to my bedroom. Once I'm done
For the day.
And I'm getting to a place of rest, I'm going to leave everything called phone, laptop, computer in my living room. And I'll go to my bed. That means I am not going to pick anything.
That's really good discipline. I respect you for that. I don't think I can do that. Because I
do-
literally carry laptop, phone, everything in bed.
Really, I like that. No, I'm on Jesse's side. Like, I tend to put my phone on a charger out of the room, and it has helped me in the morning with my morning routine. But I repeat, I think when it comes to life and it comes to business, it's not one size fits all. So I wouldn't try to fixate on the methodology of how you should go about drawing boundaries. What I want people to understand is why you need to draw boundaries, and then what those boundaries look like. So don't draw boundaries on subjective things. Stuff like, I don't pick up calls. What that is going to be the methodology once you've figured out, I don't want anything to encroach on my family time, as an example. So you say, I want to have dedicated time with my family, or I want to have dedicated personal development time in the evening. So I want to read a book from 8 to 10, and then I go to bed uninterrupted. Or I want to go to the gym uninterrupted. So what do? Around that time, you say, I'm going to put my phone in the living room. That is a methodology towards the main boundary, and that main boundary makes sense. Personal development is non-negotiable, and you're like, the only time I have is 8 to 10. So what I'm trying to say is that's what the mentality should be. It's a mindset, not necessarily it's not a methodology. You need to process what boundaries look like, healthy boundaries.
Yes, Ephraim Ramwenga joining us this morning from the Living Entrepreneurship Conversations. Thank you so much, Ephraim, for your time you spent with us.
Pleasure, man.
Coming up, we have the news.
Kigali in the Morning brings you the 8 at 8.